So, this is a story that needs to be told. I need to speak on where I have been and what I've been doing for the last 20 years of my life. And I also need to make my intentions clear and provide people with some clarity. When I was 28, I had a girlfriend who I will refer to as Homegirl from Queens. Homegirl from Queens Homegirl from Queens put me on to spirituality. She is actually the reason why I began to study spirituality during my Saturn return. The Saturn return is the 28th year of life, as it takes the planet Saturn 28 years to circumvent the universe. Um, she put me on to spirituality in the beginning. What I did not know was that she was immature and at the time could not be trusted. She had, for what I will only describe as hidden motives. To make a long story short, she got pregnant. The baby didn't make it. My son, whom I named Rigel, I named him Rigel after the sixth star in the Orion constellation. She eventually moved to Atlanta. She tried to get me to move with her, and I refused because ultimately I felt like I could not trust her, which turned out to be true. I could not trust her because, like I said, she had hidden motives. Now, the problem with the events after what happened with her moving to Atlanta and me being still in Brooklyn is by this time the fire had already been lit. The death of my son actually triggered a tremendous amount of change in me. And I wanted to know why my son died and why so many people um, in my life had kids and I didn't. Why was I still fatherless out of everyone in the community? Because I'm positive I would have made a great father. But to make a long story short, that was the end of my relationship with her. She went about her business. I went about my business. And I haven't actually seen her since. That was 20 years ago. I was 28 when I moved to Virginia. I was supposed to stay with my friend Larry, but he went missing. So I ended up staying with my aunt, my mother's baby sister. Her name is Queen. While staying with Queen, I ended up working at Walmart. I was at Walmart for 5 years. Throughout all of this, I actually never stopped studying. I studied everything that I can get my hands on. I studied and watched lectures from Phil Valentine, Bobby Hemmett, C. Freeman Nell, Delbert Blair. I used to watch a yogi from the Himalayas. His name was Dattatreya Siva Baba. Now he goes by Dr. Palai. I used to watch him a lot. So I'm studying, I'm reading, and now at the time, after having moved to Virginia, I'm actually working in Walmart Distribution Center. And I'm studying and I'm doing all of that. And I'm doing all of this on my own. I do not have a teacher. I have not joined any groups. I have not joined any fraternities. I have not joined anything on my own. This is about 6 years after my 28th birthday. I never stopped studying because I actually wanted to know. I didn't have a particular goal in mind. I just wanted to know what this place was and what was I actually studying. I knew that the ancient Egyptian sciences were not lost, but I also knew that they were not readily available to everyone. So while I'm studying the ancient Egyptian sciences, I'm also working a full time job, 40, 50, sometimes 60 hours a week if I wanted overtime because it's just me. I don't have any children. I'm not married. I don't have a family. So I can make as much money as I want to make. I'm only financially responsible for myself. But at the same time, it actually proved to be a burden on me while I was studying and working. Eventually, I actually learned that I wasn't just studying, I was actually on what's referred to as the hero's journey or the journey of the hero. Eventually, the hero's journey metamorphosized into the alchemical process. The hero's journey is basically the journey of maturity. The alchemical process is an entirely different beast in itself. So the alchemical process, now that I've been studying long enough, I now know that the alchemical process is actually a process by which a soul is pretty much purified of its human consciousness, and consciousness becomes what's referred to as divine. So my consciousness changed from that of a human to more of a divinity kind of perspective on the world. This is the way the ancient Egyptian priests looked at the world. This is the way those who are the caretakers of society looked at the world. This is the way the pharaohs of Egypt looked at the world. And what I did not know then is back in those days, the alchemical process was actually necessary for all leadership. If you wanted to be a leader in society back then, you had to undergo the alchemical process. You basically had to master your appetites. You had to learn to look at the world objectively. You had to master your ego. You would have to master your libido, and you would basically have to live a life of mental, emotional, and physical discipline. If you can do this, you were said to be awake, aware consciousness, or have obtained what they referred to as gnosis. Gnosis, gnosis. Basically, gnosis is having the mind of God. That's what they referred to. You would be able to command your own personal reality. A very small snippet of what gnosis is now, very, very minute fraction, is the law of attraction. Gnosis makes the law of attraction look like preschool in the first grade. Gnosis is going all the way, even so much so to where the student, you would even raise your kundalini, this sleeping divine energy, asleep in most melanated people. I did not know it at the time when I was 28, but I was actually on the path to doing that. When I was in Walmart, I actually had cultivated the strength to look into my background because my mother and my family, they would always tell us, you have Native American blood. Our ancestors were always here. We're not African. Our bloodline stems from the actual this continent, the Americas. So I actually had or have Native American, indigenous, or aboriginal DNA. Let's fast forward to me still being in Walmart, having a desire to leave Walmart because I felt as though I was really outgrowing Walmart. I was already studying ancient Egypt and these sacred sciences. But what I did not know is I was studying psychology. See, the ancient Egyptians, they had a way of packaging their sacred sciences in symbolism and in a very mysterious language, if that makes sense. The ancient Egyptians had a habit of using allegory and symbolism to tell stories about the human mind. If you do not know it, mythology, Hercules, Zeus, Ares, Poseidon, all these different gods, even the female gods, Athena, Venus, Aphrodite, all these mythos of gods, those are actually all aspects of the human mind. What they did was they took the aspects of the mind and they gave them personifications. Then they gave them stories. So they would have, you know, a feminine part of the mind, start a family with a masculine part of the mind. And in the story, they would tell you about them coming together, getting married, having sex, yada, yada, yada. And then eventually they would have a child. And then that child would be something new or like an idea. This is basically them and their way of explaining to you how various aspects of your mind work together to create something new, which is like an idea, or that child of both those aspects of a mind would actually be another aspect of your mind. An example I would give you is a fight. Let's say you have Osiris fighting Set. Set would symbolize one aspect of the mind, or the totality of what you are. Osiris would represent another aspect of the mind, or the totality of what you are. So for the sake of this example, we're going to say that Set is actually your libido, your sexual fire, your sexual urges. And Osiris is the subconscious mind, the medulla oblongata. So Osiris is the medulla oblongata, and Set is your genitals, for the sake of this example. What the ancient Egyptians would do is they would personify your genitals as Set, and they would personify your subconscious mind or your medulla oblongata as Osiris, and they would have them fight. Basically, what they're explaining to you through story, symbolism, and allegory is the relationship between your sexual energy and your medulla oblongata, the subconscious mind, or the spinal cord, or your reptilian brain, or the way you should be managing and conquering your libido. If you expand it wider, you see they will use the same exact story, but they will explain something cosmic, like Set then becomes chaos and Osiris then becomes order. So they will show you the interconnected relationship and the adversarial relationship between chaos and order. This is what I realized I was actually reading, and this is how the Egyptians had structured everything. So if you don't know that, if you're not looking for the secrets of these riddles and how all these things are actually put together, you will actually miss what the ancient Egyptians were teaching you completely. It's not a story of, two brothers having a fight and one gets chopped up and, buried and his body parts scattered and all this different shit. What they're actually doing is they're actually explaining to you how your mind works. Once you figure that out, you actually have to put yourself in the story, which is where the alchemical process comes in. Now that you know how chaos deals with order and their relationship, now that you know how your libido and the relationship your libido has to your reptilian brain, because you now know, it's now up to you to put yourself in the driver's seat and apply this knowledge to yourself. Now you got to learn how to control your libido and master your libido. Now you got to learn how to reprogram and reorganize your subconscious mind. Bring them together, bring your libido and your masterful control of your libido with your masterful control of your subconscious mind. The two become one, they merge, and now you are considered to be complete, or what they refer to as whole, or a holy man, or whole in the sense of your mind, body, and soul now being one, or operating like a holistic unit, a undivided individual. You are now said to be a holy man, WHOLE, whole. You are no longer divided. Your libido is no longer doing its own thing while your subconscious mind is doing whatever your parents told you to do. You have now taken the reins of your mind, your body, and your soul. You have taken this physical machine off of automatic and now you've put it on manual. I hope that makes sense. So I'm learning all these different things. I'm also learning how to reintegrate myself into society and basically find out where I belong, because this was a lot of fucking work and I do not wish this shit on my enemies. The alchemical process is actually a tremendous amount of work. It's too much work to be doing while you're working. I will say that. And what I am going to say is no one should be doing and undergoing the alchemical process while having a goddamn job. The 40-hour work week in conjunction with the alchemical process, they do not mix. That shit is like oil and water. And there was a huge chunk of time in my life where I actually felt as though I was actually being punished for having to go through the alchemical process while having a full-time job. I went from Walmart, I went back to college. And while I was in college, I was driving for Uber and Lyft, which was actually a great fit for me during that time, being able to drive for Uber and Lyft. Once I left college, I started working in the restaurant industry, because anyone who knows me knows that I know how to cook. I started cooking in junior high school with the culinary arts, and then I went from junior high school in the culinary arts to high school in the culinary arts, and eventually I turned down a scholarship to New York Restaurant School because the lifestyle is shit, and the chefs who would come to the school put me on game. It was like, hey, you know, you got the gifts and you're talented, but being a chef fucking sucks. Your lifestyle will suck. You will work a tremendous amount of hours. And I eventually ended up getting to the top, where now, I have all of my certifications or whatever the case may be. And once you become basically a head chef, or you basically run your own restaurant, there's no place to go but to open your own damn restaurant. You know what I'm saying? So that's actually the ceiling of that industry. But ultimately, I had learned through the alchemical process that I was only in the restaurants because of something that happened in my childhood connected to my mother. I'm going to minimize my relationship with my mother in this share space, but my mother had a tremendously negative influence over me. However, I did not know that until I began to study my own mind and study my own behavior and study why I behaved the way that I behaved and why I would make the decisions that I would make. And we all know that, the the field of psychology, they tell you everything goes back to the goddamn mother. And it's actually true, because your mother is the person who programmed your mind. So once I began to study my own mind and look at my own mind, I would clearly see my mother's fingerprints, because my mother was the one who raised me and taught me everything that I needed to know, and denied me from learning things that I should have known. But, that's another story. But I began to see my mother's influence over all of what I was. Let's move to the conscious community. What I did not know at the time is that I actually had an unknown or a hidden relationship with the conscious community. I still, to this day, at 45 and 20 years in, have an unknown relationship with the conscious community. I don't even know where to begin with that shit, but it is what it is. I did not know that the men in the conscious community were all connected like a network. Right? Last night, was this? I'm recording this February. Nope, that's a lie. March, March, March 3rd. Tuesday, March 3rd. Last night, Black Magic 363 had a video, basically a conference with how the conscious community in New York started. And I love that damn show. I needed that show. That is something I needed to hear, something I needed to see, the tapes and the relationships that everybody had with everybody. One of the things that they basically solidified for me was the fact that they all started to quit their jobs. A lot of them say, man, I went to my friends and I contemplated, I'm thinking about quitting my job. I'm thinking about quitting my job. Good jobs. One dude said he was at Verizon making 50 an hour. I wouldn't have left that goddamn job, at least until after I fucking retired and had some financial stability, because one of the things I learned about the conscious community is a lot of those guys in the conscious community don't have financial stability. And the way this government and their relationship with international entities are going, I don't wish financial burdens and financial instability while going through the alchemical process on anybody. That shit is a punishment I would not wish on my worst enemies. And if anybody is forced to do that, you need to seriously reevaluate your relationship with people who think that you being isolated and having no teachers while going through the alchemical process, while your mind is being restructured and reorganized, while your ego is dying, and the very parts of you that have to look after you in every way that you can are being neutralized and going through these transitional phases in life, to have to be out here on your own with no support system while you go through the alchemical process is absolutely unacceptable. I don't give a shit what nobody has to say about nothing. The 40-hour work week does not mix with the alchemical process, especially if you're on without family, friends, or support. If someone tells you that that's the way it has to go, I don't personally think that those people mean you any good. Maybe 1,000 years ago, but living now in this metropolis where we got poison food and the government is spraying chemtrails on everybody and everybody's under surveillance, and you got algorithms playing with everybody's mind and everything that's going on today, this world, it's a fucking terrible fucking thing to go through. It's not okay. But I digress. One of the things I heard them speaking about in the video last night was how they were contemplating quitting their jobs. But what I also noticed is that they had community. While this community or this thing was growing from the grassroots up, they were able to call each other and speak to one another and give each other donations. They had businesses to run, which they started outside of out in Harlem on 125th Street. They had camaraderie amongst one another. They had fellowship. They had brotherhood. None of them, I didn't hear anybody say, I was on my own. I didn't hear anybody say, you couldn't help me. They would say that even when they were in a disagreement with one another, they still would help one another and help them sell products and give each other donations. So I can only think to myself and ask myself, where the fuck did this whole solitude and isolation while working a 40-hour work week in a major metropolis, while undergoing the alchemical process where the mind is in a constant state of flux and having no support, no guide, and no one to talk to. You are on your own in every form and fashion. Nobody said anything like that last night. So I don't know where this shit come from today. And someone owes me an explanation. And until I get that explanation, a lot of you might find me to be difficult to fucking be around. And I'm not lying. A lot of you, if I ever find myself in your company or others that may have questions for me and why I feel the way I feel, someone is going to have to explain that aspect of what I'm watching and seeing, because I'm actually seeing a lot of community. I'm seeing a lot of fellowship. I'm seeing a lot of brotherhood and sisterhood. And someone is going to have to explain to me how I ended up over here on my own in every sense of the fucking word. I digress. What I did not know at the time while I was studying is that there are levels to this shit. You got chakras, which is fucking first grade, and breathing techniques and, pranayama and all this other shit. And now where I'm at now, to where I'm decoding horror and understanding horror with regards to magic, witches, wolves, vampires, and all this old other shit. All that shit came out of Egypt. AMC has a show called Interview with the Vampire. I'm decoding that, finding that same information inside ancient texts and ancient Egyptian texts and ancient Egyptian books, studying concepts like Sekhem and Apep and all these different sciences, getting into books like cyclomancy, psychic warfare, psychic powers, being able to send thoughts, astral projection, dream recall, and all these different things. I did not know I would end up in this area when I first began. Once again, no teacher, no support system, struggling through the 40-hour, 50-hour, sometimes 70-hour work week as a chef. Yes, I did work 70-hour weeks as a chef in the fourth quarter of the year because that's the holiday season. That's where everybody's going out to eat with friends, family, and catching up in ABC XYZ. Y'all already know what the fourth quarter is like in America. I just was ending up in places where I had no idea I would end up studying topics that I had no idea I would end up studying. I just did not know where this thing would take me, but I never stopped. I kept going. I did not stop. I did not give up. I stayed vigilant and I kept going. Now, here I am, 45, a completely different nervous system, completely different ego. I am no longer in any form or fashion the person I was when I left Brooklyn. I don't even value the same things that I used to value. It's a complete flip upside down. I have more books than anything else. I still am spending the vast majority of my time alone, still studying. I no longer need to sit on the floor to meditate now. I can sit in a chair and meditate. I remember when I first started at 28, I was struggling to meditate. I used to have to sit on the floor. I used to get a plant. I used to surround myself with the elements, a bowl of water, a candle, a goddamn incense. I used to have to set the whole scene just to get my mind right so that I can fall into a meditative state. Now I can fall in a meditative state at work, standing at in front of a goddamn cutting board. But the growth over 20 years. Now I have this calm seated in the center of my chest, and I have this relaxed demeanor. I don't even speak the way I used to speak to people anymore. I have changed in so many ways to where I did not know what I would become 20 years later after I had left New York. I left New York at 28. Now I'm 45. Considering all the changes that I've been through, would I change some things? 1 fucking million%. I have been cheated, lost money, lost friends because I was a glutton for punishment and a people pleaser at 28 when I first left New York. Now those behaviors have been purified from my mind. So the way I see people and friends and family are completely different. I no longer go to family gatherings or family outings as the alchemical process has pulled me away from society and all the things that I used to value. I used to be a class clown. I still have my personality, but I'm no longer aiming to please. I'm no longer the guy at the party running around who wants to make everybody laugh. I'm no longer the people pleaser that I used to be. I no longer care for material things and material wealth the way I once would at 28. If I got my hands on thousands of dollars, I was going shopping. I probably wouldn't spend it all on clothes, but a huge chunk of it would go to clothes and my physical appearance. You know, I used to, when I was in a band and I would get haircuts and I was making money, I would get haircuts twice a week. I would get one haircut on what was it, Tuesday or Wednesday, and then I would get a shape up. I would literally be in the barber chair 2 days a week, and the barber looked at me. He was like, "You coming here too much. I'm starting to push your hairline back. I gotta stop." But he told me, "You coming here too much." That's how, I guess, material you could say I was. I used to be very into my looks. Not so much anymore. I'm not that same guy anymore, almost to the point where I'm well aware of the fact that a lot of family and friends don't really recognize what I've become over the years. Now that I'm at this place where I am, I feel as though I'm transitioning to a point where I want to teach because I see the gap in between those with integrity and those who lack integrity. Having conversations with those who truly want to have the knowledge and want to know, spending too much time in the presence of those who don't really care for the knowledge. They just want to be seen and they want to make some money. If I did play a role in facilitating the knowledge that I have received over the last 20 years, it would be a role that I know would be vastly destructive. Because once I studied myself, The moniker is know thyself. Know who you are. I am very destructive. I'm very disruptive. I do not let things sit and fester. I have to address it. We're gonna deal with it. We're gonna, you know, fix this thing and get it right and get it to where it's supposed to be and get it to where it need to be. There's no reason to let anything just sit untouched, knowing it's wrong or broken. Let's fix it. There's no reason to let it stay broken. That's my personality. If I know I can fix something, I'm going to fix something. If I know I can make something better, I'm going to make it better. That's just who I am and what I am. So I can already see by looking into some of these spaces, some people will not be happy with my active participation in these spaces. I already know my disposition and my personality will be destructive and disruptive. And I'm okay with that. But what I'm not okay with is doing so having been manipulated. What I've also realized about the conscious community is the conscious community is a very manipulative place. There are a lot of manipulators in the conscious community. There are even covens and cabals in the conscious community. For the most part, to the average individual, these groups go largely unrecognized and unknown, but I can see them because I know what I'm looking for and I know what I'm looking at. Have I ever said anything to any of these groups? No, because I've been minding my business. I don't get involved. Having that being said, just because I didn't say anything, that doesn't mean I don't know anything. So I also know that some of these spaces are actually, well, I was going to say some of these spaces are protected spaces, but that's not true because I can also see the government agents in the spaces and I can see the businessmen dressed like priests, the same way the average Reverend Porkchop or Creflo Dollar or whoever is in the Christian church gaming people for the money. I can see that same thing happening in the conscious community. What I will say is what I really want to do is correct the imbalances within the people who give these individuals their attention. And I know that will cause disruption because we all know hospitals and doctors can't profit and benefit from a society of healthy, glowing, and vibrant citizens. I want to finish with this. I am well aware of, well, I have become very much aware of movement around me. There's a ton of movement around me. What I will say is, although I've been on my own and doing my own thing, I don't want anyone to believe as though that I've had my head in the sand throughout the entire 18 years. I've seen you. I've seen all of you. I've seen you in the mall. I've seen you in the grocery store. I've seen you everywhere. Just because I haven't said anything doesn't mean I haven't seen you. It's I need to say that. I've always known, and to be completely honest, I've always felt your presence. Today I posted a picture on my Instagram about the observer experiment. They say that quantum physics has learned that the observer has an effect on the observed. We know we call this the slit experiment. And what's that movie? What the bleep do we know? They put that in there. And then my question becomes, let's take an individual who's under surveillance, right? Whether it be the government or whoever. Shit, today hackers have people under surveillance. Who knows who has people under surveillance? And that's actually one of the reasons I felt as though I needed to make this video. You have the observer experience and the observer experiment, should I say, and the observed. And then I asked, what are the long term effects of a specific group of people, whether it be the government, the CIA, or FBI, or local police, or whoever the fuck, or a secret society. You know, there's so many damn secret societies. I actually have a book on secret societies right here somewhere. I needed to educate myself on secret societies because I was ignorant on secret societies. I know that they exist like everybody else, but I didn't know how fucking many numbers there are. The ones that we talk about on the internet and the average Joe Schmo talking about Freemasons and everybody's yelling about the goddamn Illuminati. Now everybody's talking about Epstein and friends or whatever. That doesn't even scratch the surface with regards to secret societies. I honestly think that if the public is speaking about your secret society, the jig is up. Yeah, I need to let that go and create a new one because that society is no longer a secret. But what I did not know is how many numbers. The numbers of secret societies is ridiculous. Like the same way we know there's like 300 or 200 different forms of Christianity, there could be like goddamn 50 different types of Rosicrucians. It's like, what the hell? It's a whole nother world. It's so convoluted and polluted and whatever the hell it is. My point is this. In today's day and age, where you have people studying ancient and sacred texts, it would be foolish for anyone to walk in a situation blind. When I say blind, I mean not knowing who you're dealing with. Because in this society, this here game, in today's day and age, with the media, the wars, and everybody's looking at the politicians funny and the governments, nobody has any business thinking or convincing themselves that they know when they know that they do not know. And I am not in the business of lying to myself. I know that I do not know everything that there is to know about these secret societies. What I will say is the time has come to speak and open your fucking mouth. The time has come to make yourselves known. The time has come. This from what is it, 28 to 45? That's a long time to be watching somebody. So either you are a benefit to my growth and development, or you are a detriment to my growth and development. And this goes for anybody studying or learning anything. Do not enter into anything blindly. I know I will not enter anything blindly. The time has come for clarity and revelation. I'm going to just leave that there.